Hi.
Hello.
Oh,
Oh,
how have you been, Mr.
I'm
Up and
good.
Up?
I'm
Wait,
good.
sorry, not Up and Up, Run Up.
Who saw that one coming?
The joke goes on. Wait, so I want to ask, why do you have a podcast mic? What have you been using that for?
So right
Spill the
before
tea. Spill the tea, sis.
right before COVID and stuff started, me and my friends, we just finished finals. We were like, how crazy would it be if we started a podcast, Lamal?
Okay.
And so we did, and we recorded like 8-9 episodes of content, and we uploaded a few, but we haven't like really got onto the creation chain because we were too lazy to figure out how to do like online video stuff, because we didn't have like a video interface. We made a shitty picture on Paint, and that would be the image for the whole video, and we just talk over it.
Okay.
So not your kind of high quality content that your fans have come to expect.
I don't know. It's really not that much work other than you just find a video recording software and click record. Wait, so what was your podcast about? What did you guys talk about?
Oh my God, it's going to be great. So we called it Podcast at Home, because then the intro could be like, Mom, can we have a podcast? And then it's like, no, we have podcasts. And that would be our podcast. And it was just like us like playing games and just talking in the back and having a conversation. It wasn't like structured or anything.
Okay.
We would do this thing where we would record on Fridays, we would record, order pizza, have dinner, and then do like a second session. And the second session would just be so much more unhinged, because it would be like 12 a.m. We were half asleep, we were tired, and we just had screaming matches at each other. And we were like, we can't put this on YouTube. We're just like screaming at each other. And it's quite unflinch. It's like a cold reality check when you have to be funny for content, and you're like, wow, I'm really not that funny, huh? Because recording like an hour-long episode and trying to stay entertaining throughout is quite a challenge, right? And like, yeah. And it's also like we're so reliant on like inside jokes. Like if you showed this video opening to like someone from your university, they'd be like, who's Abhinav? Who's Pranav? Like they wouldn't. It's a very small medium that would get the jokes that we make, because they're all inside jokes. And then to become more funny is then even more of a challenge, while also trying to stay entertaining. So we didn't take it too seriously, but this is just like, we tried doing something. It was like a nice creative project, and it was fun.
I think I definitely relate with that. I don't know if I could be entertaining for 1 hour, which is why like the whole premise of my podcast is not to be entertaining, because I think in the end, if you try to please other people, then it's like there's no end to that road. You could keep going down that road and you can never find the end. But if you kind of realign your beliefs so that you, like, the purpose of this is to please yourself, then that's something that you can quantify and that you can say, I think I've done a good job of it. Which is why, to me, it's just more sustainable just to do things that I'm interested in. But I would like to say kudos for you, for your podcast.
Thank you.
To all my listeners, go check out Armaan Chaiwalla at youtube.com.
It's not there. I'm not gonna plug my podcast because I don't think it's good content,
bro.
But it's literally just 3 19-year-olds sitting in our living room with echoey audio because we were too lazy to work out acoustics, and just making dumb jokes for an hour, and that's just it.
But at least you got the podcast mic, and that's already showing me up at my own game. I don't know what to say about that.
It was on sale, and so we were like, oh, why not?
Okay.
If we put money into it, we come back out, you know.
When you said podcast mic, I expected like a big podcast mic, but it's like this little microphone thing.
Size doesn't matter, Zar. It's how I use the mic that matters.
I think if you ask people, size does matter. There's a minimum.
Okay.
There is a minimum.
Mic size?
You remember the jokes we used to make in DC that were like, you know what they say about people with big hands? What was the punchline?
Big gloves.
Yes!
Right. I made that joke yesterday. I was talking to someone and I literally made that joke yesterday.
Some jokes never die. Some jokes just become richer like wine.
Right.
Anyway,
But
it's
yeah.
it's really nice to see you again. I'm sorry that I had to push the podcast back for an hour. We
Honestly,
ended.
it's not me, right? I was like, let's do Friday, and then I was like, psych, let's do next week, and then I was like, psych, I can do Friday, so I can wait. I can wait an hour.
It's all right. We were out for a run, and then we had breakfast, and then we were just like, oh, it's time to go home, and then we were all like, so Anyway, before we go and talk about anything, I'd just like to say I appreciate you taking the time, because it was really, I don't want to say it was the only reason, but the call we had back in, I want to say January or December.
Yeah, it was a few months ago, like when I was wearing pink. I remember that call where you were like, would you be on a podcast if I had a podcast? And I was like, hell yeah.
All right, so now we have come to the point, and I think you weren't. You did encourage me. You were like, I think you have the social skills and the ability to keep people interested, and it was nice to hear that from you. And you're like, okay.
I mean, just from like the baseline of what we used to know each other in high school, you were always more of, I don't want to say like a host, but you knew what to say and when to say it. And that's important when you have like a large variety of guests. Like I'm sure I'm just generalizing here, but like I'm assuming your friend group will have a lot of different people. So you won't have like super extreme people. Like I'm guessing you won't have any like conservatives or like racist people on your podcast. So you don't have to try and diffuse those kind of situations. But from your friend group, it's a question you have to ask yourself.
Hey, sorry, go on. Yeah, from my friend group.
Yeah, so from your friend group, there's still a lot of just different people in general. Like how me and Abhinav look the same, but I'm guessing those two conversations will look entirely different from your point of view as you're hosting it. And like, if I'm being completely honest, you've kind of like leveled up. Like, what is this new emotional maturity you found? You've become like you got a goatee, you got like the wise monk brain, you're spouting advice, speaking truths.
It's not just that. First of all, thank you for the compliment. And I think I've just been lucky enough to have lived in 3 different countries. And I think just as a matter of that I don't want to say I have a large friend group, but I have a large enough circle of acquaintances that don't seem to mind talking to me. So that shows that I have conducted myself in a way that is not too bad. And
you can just say you have a lot of friends, that, right?
Yeah, but then we have to define friend, and no, I'm kidding. And that includes you. So I'm still happy. I'm happy that we still have this level of comfort, especially because we haven't talked to each other in so long. I want to say like maybe like half a year or even more, but also that it's been like almost 3 years, 2 years or more since the last time we saw each other.
In person, yeah. Like, I haven't been home in a while, to be fair, because I went to the UK to visit some cousins over the Christmas break. So I just haven't seen people in Doha for a while. But yeah, I think the last time we saw each other was the chem final or the physics final. So around then. Oh no, it was the mechanics final. That was our last paper. Mr. Muhammad was there. Do you remember M2?
Who would forget Mr. Muhammad?
Did you know we're year 13 once, but he's year 13 all the
We're bringing it all the way back. So yeah, I just appreciate that. Obviously, it's been a while. Sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I feel like we've definitely gone our own ways. Like, things happen and we weren't as close as we used to be, like even towards the end of high school. But it was like, that scene in Fast and Furious when the cars turn and they go different ways. I feel like that's us, right? Because we're still close-ish, but we just gone on a different way or on a different path that doesn't intersect anymore. So we don't see a lot of each other. I follow that,
but it's not just us. For me, it's like basically once you leave high school, like especially because we were in DC, and just everyone was international. Everyone went different paths. So it was just, I don't know, with every passing year, I get more and more appreciative of the fact of like how big and how many like varied cultures I made friends with in terms of the people. Yeah. Anyway, how have you been, Mr. Armaan Chaiwalla?
Oh my god, do I have to do like an introduction for your podcast? Should I like play some end montage music, walk in, throw out a hat?
Do you want to? We can do that. All right, let's do this. Let's do this. You brought it up. You brought it up. Quick. You have 10 seconds to devise an podcast intro.
Oh shit, I have to take my headphones. Okay, wait. I don't know if you can hear me, so I'm leaving the audio stuff to you, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Fuck. Okay, well, I can't get a cue. Okay, I'm gonna count to 3 and I'm gonna roll myself in, alright?
Wait, what are you going to say then?
Oh, okay, wait, you want me to talk? I thought you wanted me to like do like a catwalk. I can introduce myself, yeah.
No. You can. No, this will be the intro to the podcast until I come up with something better. So I want you to walk in and then just say, and this week on Conversations with Friends with Zarif Hazali or something like that.
Okay. There's no audio cue because I won't have my headphones in, so I'm just gonna go off. Like, I'll let you edit it. It's your problem now.
This is the most janky thing I've ever done.
Okay, here we go. On this week with Conversation with Friends. Wait, is it Conversation with Friends or Conversation and a Friend?
Conversation with Friends.
Oh, Conversation. On this week with Conversation... No, on Conversation with... I don't want to do the intro anymore.
That was less
I can introduce myself.
All right.
I thought I had more pizzazz going in, if I'm being honest.
You definitely have more pizzazz than in DC, I think. I think you're... Okay, anyway, do the intro first and then I'll talk. Your intro.
Hey guys. Okay. Hey guys, my name's Armaan Chaiwalla. I'm a physics student currently at UBC, going into my 3rd year. I turned 20 this year. I feel like that's too old. I shouldn't have turned 20 this year. But my hobbies include running and baking. And I've been home alone for 2 months, and I'm kind of going crazy. So I'm here for any social interaction.
You sound like a prostitute.
Times are tough, sorry. If I gotta pay tuition somehow.
You're like, I'm here for any social interaction.
Okay, no, my roommate turned up yesterday, but he left at like mid-May or like the 2nd week of May. So I've been home alone by myself for 2 weeks without, like, I haven't seen anyone in person for like a while.
Wait, so where did your roommate go off to?
His family is like, he's within the country, so he went back home because it was Eid and he wanted to celebrate that with his family and parents and everything. Mm-hmm. But he had to come back because he's doing a bunch of summer classes and he needs like his PC and stuff to work it out.
And so he's only just come back. And obviously with the situation in Qatar, it's not like you could go home or even that you wanted to go home.
I think my university was unfortunately a bit slow with just making a statement. We knew they were going to, but they took a while. And by the time they announced that classes were moving online and finals were moving online, Qatar already closed its borders. Because like I know people that got on a plane and then they were turned away at Qatar and they had to fly back. And so my parents and I didn't want to risk that. So I was like, I'll just stay here until the foreseeable future.
Did you, if you had a choice, would you want to have gone back to Qatar?
Okay, don't tell my mom this, but no, I honestly, I prefer, I prefer staying here just because, I've gotten super into like time management and like having just so much time on my hands has given me like a good way to organize things. Like I'm getting a lot more exercise done. I'm managing my diet well. I'm getting in time for myself and some hobbies. I picked up baking, like I mentioned. It's just when you have like 24 hours in a day and you have no responsibilities or prior engagements, you're welcome to fill up that time with whatever you want. And to have that freedom is somewhat nice. But whilst back home, I would probably have to it's not that I don't like my family. It's just that back home I would have to live according to their timetables and how they live their lives. And over here it's just me, and I can pick what I want to do and when. And so I feel like I've kind of got life on track. But let's see when classes start and I get busy if I can stick to it.
Well, I think that's really beautiful. But obviously, with something like that, when you say that you have 24 hours in a day, and you can basically divide it up based on however you want to, that is implying that you want to divide it up properly, or positively rather, or productively. And I feel like a lot of people get stuck on that, like going down that route.
Okay, so you know what? I don't know what your response is going to be. I get negative and positive responses for what I'm about to say, but to try and sort of get my life on track back when I was super busy and didn't know, like, I wasn't managing stuff well, like emotionally, work-wise, time-wise, I started getting into like spreadsheets. And so I log what I do every hour of every day. So that way I have a cold, like, numerical reflection of what I did today, how much sleep I'm getting, how much studying I'm doing, how much time I spent in class, how much time I spent exercising and chores and everything. So every hour of every day is logged. So that for me, that gives me a bunch of advantages. So that means because I like sticking to that schedule, if I sit down to do something, minimum I'm doing it for an hour, right? Because otherwise I would have to do something else and that wouldn't be accurate according to the time schedule. So I try to work according to a schedule that I want to fill up. So how I want to see it filled up. And so for me, that doesn't necessarily mean being productive 25 hours in a day. It just means seeing things that I want to see, right? Because for example, after exams finished in April, I was like, I need some downtime. I don't need to be productive. I've been working for the last 8 months. I can take some time to myself. And so for me, the positive increase was seeing more squares filled up with just time spent for myself, time spent relaxing, time spent sleeping, taking naps and all that, socializing with friends before all this started. But so, I mean, I get what you're saying with the positive and negative thing, but for me, I view it more of as a numerical thing where, like, what number do I want to see increase, in what time slot? Do I want more of X, less of Y, something like that? And I feel like because you only have 24 hours in a day, you sort of have to put a limit on what you're going to do every day, assuming you want to sleep 8 hours a day, which I want to. So for me, it's become more of not I want something more positive, but what am I willing to lose time on so I can get more of something that I want?
Okay. Let me sort of run through that a bit. So you have a spreadsheet of your day basically, and that's how you plan your day. And I'm guessing it seems to me like you plan it beforehand so that the next day all you have to do is just follow what you've already set up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah, go on.
It's a good system to have, mainly because, like you knew in high school, my sleep was not the best. I was not getting a human's worth amount of sleep in a week. And so to see my sleep increase and decrease, I know when I should be sleeping more, looking after myself. It's just like having a second loop in my head where I just double check everything that I'm doing today and see if that fits into like a normal day, right? If I've only slotted in like 3 hours of sleep, I have to be like, wait, I got to change something. So it's just there to make sure that I'm not doing anything too crazy. I'm not doing anything too stupid. And I'm like staying within like a healthy limits, getting exercise done, making sure I'm putting enough time to cook a good meal and eat that meal and enjoy it, getting enough sleep, and then also studying and working and all that.
But I guess when you start off with a system like this, you have to have you need to have a system to decide what you want to do. So what does that system look like to you? So yeah, what does that system look like to you? How do you decide what you want to do in a day?
So currently, I mean, originally it was just because this summer I swapped from physics into honors physics, so that means my workload increases quite a bit. And so to account for that, I wanted to make sure I was spending enough time studying per class. So, for every hour I spend in class, I spend 2-3 hours studying for that class. So during school semesters, that's just what my goal is, to make sure I match that number or I cross it. So I'm well prepared for like midterms and finals, and I'm studying well for stuff like that. Yeah. Is that a question or?
This is a question, but I didn't want to cut you off. I guess my immediate reaction to that is like, is there not a risk of doing something for a set amount of hours just for the sake of doing something for the set amount of hours? Where like even if you do, you can say that I will reach my goal if I put in 2 hours a day, but sometimes 2 hours on one day does not equate to 2 hours on another day, just in terms of how much you get done. So, I guess you can see the quantity of it, but my main point of concern would just be like it doesn't really take into account the quality of those hours.
Right. And that's a really good point. And like I think the best way to sort of justify that what I'm doing obviously isn't perfect. It's far from perfect, but just to justify how it works for me is the quality of my work, or at least in my university, I can see the quality of my work because we have weekly assignments that get graded, right? So obviously some assignments are tougher than others, some are easier than others. And so the quality of my work is immediately shining through, whether I'm doing good or bad. It's just the grade that I get at the end of the week. So I know that, for example, if we're doing something that I've previously done before or doing in another class, I can spend less time on that specific task and I can still get a better grade. But that doesn't mean I can't go further and try to build a better foundation and work on that. While for weaker subjects, I know I'll be spending more time than I've allotted. So if I spend 2 hours, or I'm supposed to be spending 2 hours, I'll probably spend an extra just to catch up and see what more is there. Like, for example, I had to take a coding class for physics. So we had to do a bunch of coding. They were like, we put balls in a basket and we shake it. So make that simulation up. And then we had to do math with that. So I've never coded before, so it was a big time sink for me. I was spending like 15 hours a week just working on code and stuff, and we had multiple assignments for that. So obviously, it would look like I was doing a lot more work on my spreadsheet because I was just sitting and staring at my code. But realistically, I wasn't doing that much work. I was just trying to figure out how to do certain tasks, and progress-wise, I wasn't working that well. So I feel like for me, the spreadsheet is just the numbers of how much work I've done, and then my grades would be a figure of how much progress I've done, right? If that makes sense.
So in a way, it's almost implying that there's a linear relationship between the hours put in and the progress you've made. I
would like to say yes. I feel like that's the easiest way to justify what I'm doing.
I feel like that's something that you kind of, even if it's not true, you have to assume it's true. Otherwise, what's the point of putting 8 hours into something? But also, I mean, with that, I think when it comes to assignments, I found that a lot of the time, the hardest part is finding the right question, or finding the right path to something is always. It's something that people should do more. It's the most important step before you actually go on and do something. It's something like what an entrepreneurs say. You have to figure out whether it's actually a problem first. And
you should open an Instagram page where you just wear suits and put quotes up in the air. I feel like that would look pretty good.
What was your quote? It's like, this time on Conversations with Friends. Oh wait, is it Conversations with a Friend? Oh wait, I don't want to do your intro anymore.
Look, I'm trying my best, okay? I've never had to do such a formal podcast. I was considering wearing like a shirt and a tie, but I was like, is that too much? Like, what do people normally wear? So I had to go back and check what everyone else was wearing in the podcast. But like, oh, they aren't wearing shirts.
Yeah, first let me address that. I'm trying to make it seem like it's a bit more formal. Like, I don't want to be wearing like just t-shirts. So like the least I can do is just wear like a collared shirt or something. But I can see that what people would say to your spreadsheeting way of organizing time is that I think, just to play devil's advocate, a person would say, "Oh, but that seems so structured. Like, how do you account for any spontaneity or like flexibility?" I'm assuming you've had these types of comments before, and like, what do you respond to that?
I usually just I get a lot more of, oh, that just seems like a lot, or that seems like a lot of work. And I mean, I don't want to start a cult or anything, but I feel like everyone should be spreadsheeting. You know, it's a lot of fun. But for like spontaneity, and it's not that I'm definitely not the most spontaneous person, just personality wise, but it's not that I'm not open to spontaneity. It's just I would feel a lot better being spontaneous if I knew that if I wasn't sacrificing my work, right? Because at the current point in time, a lot of my life is just studying. Like 60-70% of my life is just working towards getting my degree. And the rest is like building social connections, meeting new people, and like
Being on
building
a
a life.
podcast.
Being on a pod, that's 10% right there. So I feel like I kind of have to work with my life with those figures, sort of, where like I can be spontaneous, but if I'm spontaneous all day, every day, I know I'll be getting a lot less work done. And in this environment, everyone I know is busy. We all have, when classes pick up, everyone has midterms and assignments and papers due. And the last thing personally I want to do is take away from someone's time that they felt could have been spent working towards getting a better grade or whatever, because I don't want to be the reason someone feels like they did worse in like an exam or something. So if it's not that I don't have fun, but it's usually just, if I'm the kind of person that'll like on Sunday evening, I'll be like, hey, are you free anytime this week? You know, do you want to do something? So that way people have enough notice to put some time aside, and then we can do whatever we want. We don't have to plan what we're going to do, but just as long as everybody knows that, hey, there's time free to just mess around and goof around, let's do it. Obviously that's changed a lot since I'm currently not doing any classes and I'm free. So it's just more, hey, anyone want to get on call and play games, or anyone want to hang out on call, or just like, have fun. But I don't follow my schedule to a T. I usually make a rough estimate of what I'm going to do tomorrow, put that in, and then if I can follow it, I can follow it. But obviously, life's full of twists and turns. Something pops up and you kind of have to deal with it first. So
do you ever feel?
I'm not the kind of.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you ever feel negatively when you plan something and then it doesn't turn out the way that you had envisaged it in the day before?
I sort of have that feeling when it comes to exercising, because I'm trying to get into a routine where I try to run the same time every day. But some days I'm just lazy and I'll go for a run at night, or I'll go for a run later in the evening. And in that sense, I sort of feel bad about it, because I want to build that routine. And by not going for the run then and there, I'm actively working towards like not building that routine. But for me, it's also just my goal right now. Like, I wasn't the most athletic person in high school. So for me, the goal right now is just being consistent. And so the only time I've felt negatively about not following a schedule is when it comes to exercise. Rarely, like during final season. When it comes to studying, I feel bad about skipping out in a few hours, but that's usually after like back-to-back finals where I'm like, my brain is juiced right now. I kind of need to step away from the desk. So I do it for a reason. I don't feel the best about it, but I'm like, I'll do better tomorrow if I take this break today, sort of thing.
So it's not like set in stone. It's like you allow yourself not to feel bad when something doesn't go to your schedule. It's not. I have limited knowledge about autism, but from what I know, someone on the spectrum would freak out if a schedule is not followed. At least that's the difficulties I hear with people that have autistic children.
Oh, I didn't know that, but
yeah. One of the characteristics.
Yeah, for me, it's not set in stone. It's more of just hey, maybe this is like, it's like the best thing to do. Like if the timeline was perfect, that's what I would pick. But some days I'm just not as motivated, or I'm lazy, or I'm extra motivated, so I do more or do less,
I like that. I like that you said in the best timeline, which is it's very nice. I wonder what you're referring to.
I could be referring to anything. What do you think I'm referring to?
RuneScape. I don't know. Marvel, obviously. I can relate to that. I can relate to the whole spreadsheeting thing. Do you know what bullet journaling is? Have you heard of bullet journaling?
My handwriting is horrible, so I have never gotten into bullet journaling, but I have a lot of friends who do it, and it's so pretty. I mean, I know it's more than just an aesthetic, but God, it looks so fucking good. Can I swear on this podcast, by the way?
You can.
It looks so freaking good.
I don't know if your mom will watch this though. In which case, she's already heard something that she doesn't want to hear. So whilst the cart is going down the hill, we might as well throw everything on it.
That's an Instagram quote right there. Put that on your story. Boom.
No, I still like Conversations with Friends with Zari Fazali. Wait, is it Conversations with a Friend? I don't want to do your intro anymore.
If you ever make merch, it's gotta be that. I don't want to do your intro anymore.
So I brought it to bullet journaling because I used to do something similar. Not to the T where I would plan out the day. As in like from here to here. No, that's not necessarily true. I would plan out the day in my head. But when it came to actually writing it down on a bullet journal, I would have, it's something that they called a habit tracker. So on one side it'll be a table, and on one side you'll have all the habits. So you'll know sort of if you've done all these habits, then you have sort of done a productive day. And the way it works is that you haven't put a schedule to it, so that there's a flexibility to it. So, for example, on the table you'll have like run, have at least 2 meals a day, don't spend any money, sleep 6 hours. So it's just another way, or like drink 3 liters of water. So it's another way of kind of measuring your progress towards a goal, but not. To contrast it to yours, it's not time specific, but I think it's just another way of doing that. And I think it is really important. Time management is one of the things that people have the most trouble with, and I think that there is a beauty to. I have a theory, and I don't think it's. I don't think it's.
Hit me with it.
I don't think it's a theory, but it's an idea I read from a Malcolm Gladwell book. You know who Malcolm Gladwell is?
I do not, unfortunately.
He's a nonfiction author, where basically willpower is a muscle, right? And like with any muscle, if you use it, it can get tired. So when you're going about the course of a day and you have to make decisions, that is a limited, finite resource. So one way that I look at it is that if you have made all your decisions about the preceding day, the day before, then you are kind of reserving your stock of willpower for the decisions that actually matter, which is why I find it easy to run, because in the end it's already set, and it's almost like I'm telling myself I have no choice. It will be harder not to do it, because then I would have to decide not to do it. You get what I mean? Because that act of deciding not to do it is more difficult than actually doing it.
Wow. Damn, that's a good way of putting things. I've never thought of it that way.
So this is why I subscribe to the idea of discipline so much. It's like, why I find it easy to run is because I have no choice, and it would actually be difficult to not run.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. I think like back to what you said about dedication and stuff. I think one quote that I've always lived by, or tried to live by, is learn how to dedicate yourself, not how to motivate yourself. Because I feel like the more motivation based you are, the more reliant you are on things being positive, or your outlook being positive, or just you having more energy than you expect. Whilst if you're dedicated, it's just, I have to get this done. Let's just sit down and get it done. But motivation, you're like, I'll hide a Twix bar under my laptop, so when I finish this exercise, I can eat it. It's like, yeah, come on, you're just gonna get bored halfway through. So that's just how I think things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Motivation for me has always seemed like a quick fix. It's not it's not something that you can rely on to last you for a good while. It's almost, it can be a spark, but the problem with sparks is that a lot of the times it doesn't have the tinder beneath it for something to catch fire. Whereas dedication is not just the spark, it is building the tinder beneath it as well, so that what you will have is a fire that burns lasting and long. So yeah, I really agree with that. Dedication is, it's okay. Another way to put it, right? Motivation is like fixing things at the end, whereas dedication is sorting everything out before you reach the end, so that everything is in order. Then it's actually easier to go there. That is my point. Case closed.
Yeah, motivation. Oh, to make it thematically appropriate, motivation is finding a vaccine, and dedication is just social distancing, so you never have to work towards getting a vaccine. You know, prevention is better than cure.
Yeah, that comes with the idea that we should have been social distancing the whole time.
We should have been. I didn't want to see any of you guys.
Well, I wanted to see some of the guys. I don't want to see. I didn't want to see most of them. I wanted to see some of them.
Out of your friends, right here. Zarf's loyalty battle royale.
Oof. This is nice. I want to talk more about your running. I saw like recently you did your first 10K. You know, I want to. For me, it's always a moment of joy when someone gets into running, and I just want to see like what pushed you into that.
So like I mentioned before, I wasn't the most athletic guy in high school. I wasn't like on any teams and stuff. Like we started the cricket club, but that was just more for fun than it was for like staying in shape. So I wasn't super athletic. Oh,
no, I was gonna say cricket's not a real sport. Okay, go on.
Okay, just before I get into this, just so you don't get upset, because I'm technically Canadian now. I spend too much time with Canadians. I might say soccer, and I need you to be okay with that. Because that's all they call it here, and I can't.
Where's the end call button? Wait, sorry.
Look, every time I say football, they're like, "Oh, you can use your hands in football." It's like, no, not that football. So I just defaulted to saying soccer, so that they know what I'm talking about. Okay, it's survival of the fittest. I had to adapt.
I've ignored. I'm gonna ignore everything you said. Sorry. From now on, we're over. All right. Yeah. No, sorry. Yeah, get it. I get it. Go on.
So I wasn't the most athletic guy in high school. Like, I played a lot of sports just because like I like playing sports. I played like tennis, cricket, and swimming, and like I've done coaching for that. And like, so I've played sports, but I've never thought about like, what is the best I can do at this? You know, what if I was at my physical peak? Well, how would I perform, sort of thing. For me, it was just, hey, we can compete, we can play, we can learn, we can have fun. And then I came to university, and like I'm sure like a lot of others, it was a big change in environment. You know, you have a lot more, I don't want to say freedom again, but you have a lot more chances to do whatever it is you want. Yeah, liberty. There we go.
Independence.
Independence. That's a good word, because it's 4th of July today. All countries matter, by the way. And so I had the opportunity to do a lot more. And I often found myself being like, hey, you know, it's been a long day. Let's go out for like a walk or a short jog. And fortunately, Canada weather is usually nice. It's not like Doha where it's 55 degrees outside and I have to get a stroke to step out of the house. So the weather is usually pleasant. It doesn't get too hot, doesn't get too cold unless it's like super winter. And so I slowly picked up. I was actively making decisions to be more healthy diet-wise and physical exercise-wise. And I lost a lot of weight.
Can I say what motivated you to want to do that in the first place?
It was, okay, if I'm being completely honest, my first year dorm was kind of small, right? It was just like a student housing. So it was just my bed, my desk, and a closet. And when you are working nonstop for like assignments, you kind of want to change a pace, right? And so I would often just go outside. Usually it was just for a walk. You know, it's a great chance to listen to new music. It's a great chance to just stretch your legs, get some exercise done. And so I would usually be like, I'd walk like a certain distance, or I'll walk from like X to Y, because it just marked as that it's that far away. And on busier days, I would have less time to cover that distance, so I would have to walk faster. And I was like, why don't I just pick up running? That seems like the logical step to do here, because then I can cover as much distance as I want in a short amount of time. And so it was walking and then slowly jogging. And then I was like, for efficiency's sake, I slowly picked up running. But the biggest motivator for me was I ended up losing a lot of weight. Like I was around like 90 kilograms going into first year. And then by the end of the fourth month, when I came back for winter break, I was like 79 kilograms. So I lost like around 10, 11 kilograms just making healthier choices in general. And I was like, if I've made it this far, there's no reason for me to keep going and see if I can just get in better shape, you know? And so
from at this point, it was almost like a byproduct of, it was never a goal to lose weight. It was just a byproduct of making more efficient decisions.
Yeah, like I'm sure that, like, it makes sense when you put, like, for me, I live my own life every day, so I didn't notice any of the weight changes. Like, I didn't have a scale in my room, right? But then I saw my parents after 4 months, and they're like, "Whoa, you've lost so much weight," and it doesn't hit you until you see a photo of yourself from like before you lost all the weight, and you're like, "Wow, like I lost a lot of weight." And to me, I wasn't noticing the weight loss, so it wasn't a motivator then. But once I noticed the changes, and like, it was also like a physical, like a confidence boost. Like I was like, hey, I look good. People were like mentioning that I look better. I think like when we first spoke, like the first call before you started the podcast and everything, you're like, hey, you look really good. Like you've been exercising or what? And it felt nice when people say that to you. You're like, yeah, I'm exercising.
I was like this.
Yeah, you hit me with those eyes, and I was like, shit. And so it was just, I felt like physically healthier, you know, I felt better. I guess I'm not saying I'm like a health god, you know, I still eat like junk food every now and then. Like some days you just got to order like a shitty pizza from Domino's or something. So I'm not in any way the healthiest person, but for me, it was just making smaller and smaller decisions. And slowly, I think running just became a break from life, because like I said, most of my time was just studying and hanging out with friends, and running was just, I can turn my brain off. I just have to put one foot ahead of the other and just run, you know? So when the quarantine picked up, I got a lot more into running. I downloaded an app that keeps track of how much distance I'm running and what paces I'm running at. And so I wanted to see myself get better at it. And so I started pushing myself further and further. And then one day, I think you mentioned it, or I texted you about one of your longer runs, and you were like, oh, it's just like the hardest part is getting through the mental break of thinking you can't do it and then finding out you can. And so when I first broke I usually used to run like 8 kilometers max. And so when I first ran past that and I didn't feel like shit, and I felt like I was doing really well and managed to stay within my time, I was like, maybe I'm in better shape than I realized. And so running that first 10K was just me finding out that, hey, I can actually do this. Like, I don't have to stop running at 8K. I might be tired, but I can push myself and hit these goals. And that's like exciting, you know, you get excited about life because you feel like you've achieved something. And so for me, it's just like, it gives me a reason to keep doing things. And it often just reminds me that, hey, you're making progress. I feel like running or exercise in general, it's a great way to, if you're a progress driven person, it's a great way to see how much progress you've made. And that's what keeps me motivated and keep going at whatever it is I'm doing, because I can see that I'm getting better at this.
I completely agree with that. Like, yeah, one of the beauties of exercise is that it is quantifiable in a way that I don't think a lot of other domains are. Like your example of running past 8K for the first time is beautiful, because it shows that you could do something that you didn't think that you could do. And it's black and white that you did do it, that you can quantify. You can look at a number and be like, okay, yes, I've done it, right? And that's not something that you can do in a lot of things. Like, you know, I was talking to my friend the other day about confidence, right? And it's like, if you want to be more, like, confidence is not quantifiable. other than using experiences as metric points. So I think another way to say it, and the way I look at it, and I completely agree with what you say, and the way I look at it is like running it's a proxy of your ability to do things, right? So, and it's a black and white proxy. It's either you can do something or you can't, in terms of distance, in terms of speed, or in terms of whatever.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can overcome that barrier and go across 10K for the first time really makes you think, okay, right? Like, what else can I do? I can do that, right? It's not the physical sport. That's what people confuse this with. Like, when people talk to me as a runner, they're like, how can you do that? I just get so bored. And it's like, it's not the physical part that is the main motivation, or the main, okay, we talked about motivation, so I don't want to use that word. It's not the physical part that's the main benefit. It's the mental part. Like, running is nothing but a proxy to my belief in my ability to be able to overcome things. And then once you start thinking of potential other mental blocks that you might have in other domains, that you start thinking to yourself, oh, okay, I did that for running. Why can't I do that for, other things, academics or fitness or diet or even relationships? And I think that's the beautiful thing about the sport.
Yeah, I think an addictive feeling for me is at the end of a run, when you're like covered in sweat, panting for breath, you're at the start of your next lap and you're like, man, I'm so goddamn tired. But then in your head, you're like, one more. You can push yourself. You can do one more. And that feeling in itself is just something I try to replicate with everything else I do, to be pushed to my limits and be able to say, let's go again, run it back. I feel like that's, for me, it's a change, because I've never viewed things with that sort of optimism. I've always been like, I stumbled. I'll just try to cut my losses and see what I can take away from this. But now I find myself saying, you can push yourself a little bit further. Stay within your limits, but see if you can go further than where you are now,
But with that kind of attitude, like you do have to kind of you have to be sensible about the accounting. Like, I'm all for, you can push your limits. I believe everyone should push their limits. But it's like, in terms of running, if you're like, I don't know, if you've broken your toe, then I don't think that you should probably continue running.
Yeah.
Sorry,
within moderation, right? So it's always, but that also comes in fact with like, it's always like, so sometimes you run, I'm sure you had this feeling when you started running, where you would run a distance and you're like, wow, I can't imagine running past this. And you do, and you're like, oh, my range is a lot larger than I thought. So I never want to be hindering myself by setting the cap too low, but obviously there's dangers with setting the cap too high. And so it's just figuring, like, trial and error, and trying to figure out where it is that I want to place the marker of my just current max,
It's the philosophy of philosophy. It's a fancy word. It's the philosophy of progressively overloading yourself. It's like, once you run 10K, you don't plan your next run to be 21K. You plan your next run to be 12K. So so it's like, I think you can do that in so many other things, like that incremental, like you're expanding your range of abilities progressively, but in a way that you can measure, in a way that's smart, specific, measurable, achievable. What's R? What was R?
Where did you learn this?
Don't you remember SMART goals?
Was this at DC?
No, I don't know. No, I learned this.
All I remember is growth mindset.
Everything is a growth mindset. And the way we took that is that we put the word yet at the end of sentence. I can't do it yet.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, so coming back to my point, it's like, it's that progressive growth of your ability. And once you see that in one domain, then I don't think there's anything stopping you from, it might be, what might turn people off is that you kind of have to have a mechanical, systematic way of looking at things, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. you can start applying that to different domains of your life. Whereas, like, you know, in terms going back to my earlier example of confidence, right? So it's like, you know, you can talk to 2 people at a time, right? Okay, how about you expand that a bit? You can talk to 3 people at a time. You can teach a class of 6 people. You can teach a class of 12 people. So it's never putting yourself in hot water. It's slowly turning up the temperature so that you get used to it. I think that's a beautiful way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, it's the same thing with my weight thing, where like I didn't notice anything because there was small changes every day. But when you sit down and you look back, you're like, wow, I've come a long way. And that's a good feeling to see that you've made progress. It's almost addictive just to see how far you've come, and you'll kind of want to see how much further you can go, you know, not just running, but just in general.
How would you measure that for yourself? Like, as someone who knew you in high school, it seems like you have, like, the person that you are is, I don't want to go as far as to say it's a completely different person, but it's so different than when you used to be in high school. So, like, from your own perspective, how have you, how can you measure that change in terms of what?
I think the biggest thing for me, and I feel like this would apply to like anyone that knew me well in high school, that's probably what they would notice, is just if every decision was a crossroad, in high school, I would always end up taking the road which was a lot more negative and a lot more harsh at myself. I wouldn't second guess criticizing myself, and I still very much often do, but I've slowly worked towards unwinding that and being more positive towards decisions I take. Not to sound like a growth mindset teacher again, but you know, it's always just like, hey, it's okay to make a mistake. You know, you can get it next time, or you didn't reach your goal today, but you did the best you could. And what's the question?
Was that, how did you come to want to adopt that mindset in the first place?
That's a good question. I've always like, in general, high school was a shitty time for me.
So basically you wanted to get into a better position.
Oh yeah, like, I think the biggest change for me, I don't know if you can relate to this, is just the change in environment. When I moved out of high school in Doha, I came to like a brand new place where I knew nobody knew of my like shortcomings or like the mistakes I made before, and I was ready to create a new impression and create a new person with the people that were around me. It was a lot more motivating to me than I realized, where I was like, they don't need to have known who I was. I can just be who I am now. And that person can be a lot more positive. He doesn't have to be more critical of himself or so pessimistic. He can just weigh himself down. I can be optimistic. I can make mistakes. I can choose the road less traveled.
So you wanted to be optimistic because it was a better way of living. Like you believed it was a better way of living. And I guess like you realized that what you were in high school is not necessarily the most optimum way to live.
Yeah, I feel like anyone who's been through like or known me transitioning from high school to university would agree that I'm a lot more cheerful now. I feel like I have a better filter with my thoughts, not like what I say to other people, but what I say to myself. And I'm just more excited to try new things out. Like, I don't think me in high school would have sat down to try a podcast out, but me in university was like, yeah, I'll make time for it. You know, finals are done. I can put some time into making a dumb podcast with my friends. And so I've become more open to new experiences, which was never something I would do before. Like, you knew me. I would never try anything new. It was very rare that I would do something new, but I feel like I've slowly worked away from that, and I've become a person who, my friend says this a lot, and I kind of take it to heart. Try everything once, you know? That's the kind of mindset I go with. Try everything once. If you don't like it, you don't like it. You tried it, you can say you don't like it, but maybe you will like it. Like, you never know.
So what sort of things has that come? Have you done that?
For example, I think we have like art electives in our university where they want you to be a well-rounded person. So I have to take other courses, and I tried a psychology course, and it was so much fun. I made some great friends, people that I'm very close to this day. And I had amazing profs. I learned things that I never did, even to the point where I was considering minoring in psych because I just had so much fun. Whilst old me would have been like, oh, let's just take English courses because I did English in high school and I can like breeze through it because I know most of like essay writing and literature review and all that. But I tried psych. I'm doing linguistics this year, which is also something new, and I wouldn't have done that before.
It comes
when it
back...
comes to like,
sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, and when it comes to like more than just academia, it's just I've been more open when it comes to relationships. So I reach out a lot more. I talk about what's on my mind a lot more. I'm not as closed off as a person, and I'm more willing to put my emotions on the line to get my point across, and not just sitting back and just taking whatever's dealt to me and being like, hey, like I'm not happy with the way things are right now. Is there anything you can do to change the situation? Or like, I didn't like what you said. I'm not a big fan of that. Can we change it? So yeah.
It sounds like it comes back to what I call your circle of competence, which is circle of competence, circle of confidence. It's almost like coming back to my point of expanding the range at which you feel comfortable in, right? So you've done it with sport. It seems like you've done it with academics as well, where you first set foot in a psychology class, which doesn't seem like something that you would do in the past. And the fact that, the fact that you went into a psychology class for the first time, that's a translatable experience. That's transmittable to, like, just your ability to open your mind, I think, to be more receptive to ideas that you haven't necessarily been exposed to in the past. And I think it's wonderful that has translated itself into being able to take a linguistics course. It seems like U.S. universities are like it would so suit me because like this seems so open and so flexible. And it seems like you've done that with people as well. And I've always, it's not quantifiable, but there are certain mental blocks when it comes to relationships with friends, or even not friends, but just relationships with people in general. There are certain mental blocks where you think you can't necessarily go into a certain topic, or you can't necessarily delve into a certain depth with people. But coming back to the idea of trying to grow something progressively in a structured way, like I think that if you are ever in that situation where you don't think you can say something, I think you should, within moderation and with wisdom, you should try it, see what works, and maybe you can delve into it. And I think that's what breaks a lot of ice. That's like a big icebreaker, and that adds a whole lot of depth to your relationships with people, which is one of the things that I want to try and do with this podcast is try and, because it's really difficult to get someone to sit down for an hour and a half. People don't usually do this. It's not a natural way, normal way to engage with the world.
I was so excited when you told me, like, hey, DM me if you want to be on in my podcast. I was like, oh my God, there's going to be a long ass queue. I'm going to DM him. Hopefully I get a spot.
Oof.
But
I do appreciate
you told me people didn't line up.
I do appreciate that. Because this isn't normal. And I feel like this sort of thing is, in the end, it's one of the things that really matter when you're able to get to a level where you can sit down with someone and just talk and just be in the present, have no distractions, and just talk and really get to know someone. And I love that. And again, I'd like to thank you for that.
I'm glad to be here.
So I want to talk more about that transition period. All right.
Right.
So the biggest trigger for you, I guess, was moving to Canada, which is obviously a whole different environment. And that's sort of a trigger it sets you up for an opportunity that you don't have to be who you were in the past. I guess what someone could say to that is like, that trigger could have been anything. And so maybe I don't want to get into like, I guess basically you could say that, why did it have to be moving to a different country? Why? It's like, you could artificially just think, okay, you could have just done it in Doha, right? Made that decision to,
Right.
yeah.
I think for me is I often worry about what people think of me. I want people to think the best of me because I want to believe that I like being there for people. I like helping people out. I like extending a hand, even if sometimes people don't want help. But sometimes you have to be like, hey, I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm still here for you. And I love being that person. And so in a way, a lot of people at DC knew me as they had a certain image of me in their head, right? And for me, that was often just a barricade because I didn't want to, like, if I did like a full 180 there and became a completely different person, I felt like people would just think I was being disingenuous because they'd known me for like a good 4 years at that point. That's how long I'd been there. And then to be a completely different person, it would almost seem like I was putting on a caricature for the sake of putting on a caricature rather than making a genuine improvement in my life when it comes to my attitude towards things. Obviously, the people that matter to me would know that I wasn't just putting on an act. So realistically, I could have, but I had this hang up where I was like, I didn't want to be criticized by the general community for just being like a liar or a fake or in any sort of way, just trying to take the opportunity to appease to the lowest common denominator by putting on a happy face, right? So that is the biggest reason I didn't change, right? Like realistically, if things were perfect in this world, I would have changed my mindset the moment I realized that I didn't have the best mindset. But I think the mindset I had helped me get through high school. And that's honestly what I needed it for. I just needed it to get me through that one patch, and then I began a new chapter, and I was like, if I'm starting over, it's like a New Year's resolution, right? You're like new year, new me sort of thing. It was just a culmination of events where there's a new environment. It's a new part of my life. There's a lot of new people. It's a new place. Everything is just new. So why can't there be a new me? Like there was more reasons for me there was no reason for me not to change. It felt like I would be making the difficult decision by not changing. And so I felt easy to just transition into someone that I would have preferred to be throughout high school, but I wasn't because of just certain circumstances or consequences or stuff like that.
I think that's right. Like, even if we personally have the conviction to want to change as a person into something better, we are usually stopped by our environment. And it's not that we know within ourselves that what our conviction is straight and true, but we're just afraid that basically what other people think, right? Because they have a certain view of us, and to upset that view it's very difficult, especially for people that have known you for a long time.
I mean, honestly, from the people I speak to DC is not like the circle is not very large, but I felt, who is it? All right, we're putting everyone on blast. Okay.
Yes.
Shout out to my bro Pranav. Pranav's on that list. I talk to Pranav every day. I think it's hard to say who you talk to because we sort of have like this social circle, but we're on each other's Instagrams, we're on each other's Snapchats, and you see each other's stories. Does that count as interacting or like?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
Yeah, right.
Because,
but like,
yeah.
Every now and then I'll get a text because like I posted like a song on my story, or like when like I put something on my story, someone's like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Like I haven't spoken to them in like Kiana, for example. I haven't spoken to her even in high school. I didn't speak to her, but she texted me the other day because I put some songs on my story, and she's like, "I love this band," and I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't know anyone who liked this band," and then I found out that there were people in like DC that listened to this band, and. Does that count as a fruitful conversation, or was that just passing small talk? You know.
You can only decide whether a conversation was fruitful after you have that conversation.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like I see the benefits of social media, but a lot of the time your interactions don't get much below the surface. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not like you're developing anything. I mean,
Right.
some people might, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I don't think, me personally, I don't, it's going to sound really cold, but I don't find myself caring particularly that much about the people I see on social media. Like you go to your Instagram story feed and you're just like click.
I definitely agree with that.
So yeah, it's important.
Right. So like I was saying, for me, it's just like we have a social circle where if I was back home and I ran into them in Villaggio, I'd be like, oh, hey guys, what's it going? Like, how are you? Like, we know of each other. And looking back, it's dumb that I put people that I don't care about and I don't remember on such a pedestal and stop myself from changing into a better person. Definitely not pinning on them. It's not their fault. If any of you are watching this, I love you guys. Most of you. I love him so much. I'm here on a podcast with him. What did you expect? But it seems dumb to me that I put these people on such, or let these people be seen or in such high regard as to myself. And realistically, would they have cared? Probably not.
What do you mean? Like, in terms of the people you viewed on social media? Is that what you mean?
No. So like I have a small, like, I'm guessing you also have a small circle of people from DC that you talk to, like Pranav, Rakshana, and like I talk to Sanjay quite a bit as well, and like Nick and a few other friends I talk to quite a lot, or some more frequently than others. But those people are people that have had an impact on my life, and there are people that I call my friends. But then there's other people that we knew of each other. Like, we might have been in the same math class, we might have been in the same science classes, but they were just in year 13 when I was in year 13. And it's just people like that I thought would view me as a fake if I decided to change my attitude or change my outlook or my behavior. And looking back, it seems stupid that I would put them on such a pedestal when realistically they probably wouldn't have cared what I was doing, because they had their own shit to do. And one of the nice things about coming to university is that you have classes of like 300, 400 people, and you're not going to get to know all of them. You'll get to know like the person that sits next to you, and that's about it. And so you feel a lot more detached from like, you know how like we had the class of 2018, right? We were all like, there was a sense of community. But when I'm like class of 2022 at university, no one gives a shit. There's like 1,000 of us. I'm not going to know all of you. You're not going to know me. And so the community I build is the community of people that I want to see on a regular basis. And those people want what's best for me. And so why would I not choose something? Why would I not actively make choices that that are better for me? And I've been fortunate enough that I've had friends that have been very supportive of this, and they've also, when I like slip up and I'm being critical of myself when I don't have to be, they're like, hey, relax, you don't have to say that to yourself. You're not doing anything wrong here. You know, you can make mistakes, stuff goes wrong. And so I'm proud of that at the very least.
I think another way of saying it is it's very easy to become friends as a matter of, you can make friends as a matter of circumstance. Like, you realize that the friends that you make in your social circle is a big part of it is just the people that you end up having to spend time with. And in DC, in a school environment, that just naturally ends up being with the people that you have classes with. But when you get into university where you don't necessarily, where it's more than possible that you'll meet someone and then you will never see them again. When you want to make friends with someone like that, it takes a lot more effort, because there is no level of naturally being exposed to them. You have to put effort into exposing yourself to them.
It's like, I refer to this a lot as just being a proximity friend. Like in DC, we all had to be in the same place at the same time. So we were close to each other. So we were physically close. So we became like close in that sense. But in university, where everyone has their own timetable and their own priorities, and you don't have to show up to class, you can skip classes, and there's no responsibility thrust upon you to be there at a certain given time. Like, if you weren't in class, if you weren't in third period chemistry, some teacher would be out looking for you. If you're not at chemistry in university, no one gives a shit. So there's no promise that you'll see that person. And so you have to make an active effort. And that sort of helps me get invested into friendships where I would always have cold feet at that step. I feel like I've gotten better at just moving past that and being like, hey, you seem super cool. Want to be friends, you know?
I really like that. I really like that term, proximity friends. I think I'm going to start using that. But another way, I mean, with that term, you can also say like, you can basically be friends with, I don't want to say you can basically be friends with anyone, but you can find a way to be friends with people just by spending enough time around them. And what happens is that you have to decide to want to spend that time with them.
Right.
So that they become more than just proximity friends. Okay.
Oh.
So this is a brain flash. It happens about once a month, so you gotta pay attention to it. So you can have, there are friends in your proximity just as a matter of circumstance. And then there are friends which you pull into your proximity as a matter of preference.
Mm-hmm.
And one I think is much better than the other.
The one which has active effort involved, right?
Not to say that, I think a lot of the time, your closest friends may just be the ones that you spent most time with as a matter of circumstance. Which is why, sorry, go.
Oh, yeah, I feel like it's a circle that feeds into itself, right? Because like I have friends and none of them were like not in the same major, so we don't have a lot of classes together. But like I moved in with him, he's my roommate. So we went from me pulling him into my proximity so we become better friends to then becoming proximity friends. So I feel like there's a line you should draw. Like having a proximity friend isn't bad, but because they could be in close proximity because you chose them to be there. So it's not all bad. It's just the circumstance is very important to look at. And I feel like some people would end up just having only proximity friends. And so when they lose that proximity, they're like, oh, you know, where's my social circle?
This is something I particularly felt back in when I was in the UK, when I was making friends basically for the second time in university, which is a harsh, I mean, I did it for first year and now I've found that I had to do it again in second year. The thing about the University of Birmingham is that it's so big that you really have to put effort in, and because it's like there's so much chance you won't ever see a person again. But kind of that the filtering that comes with that is that person also has to be open into wanting to pull you into their proximity as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's the filter it has to go through.
I mean, like that's I don't know if it's a bad, okay, it's just a thing where like at university when you interact with people, they have friends that they've known for like their whole lives, right? They have their own set of close circle friends, and there's no way you can expect to be there day one, right? Like there's people that I'm close to, like for example Pranav, he's my best friend. I'm super close to him, and I wouldn't expect anyone I meet on like my first day of classes to take a spot, because why would they? And realistically, that goes both ways. But I feel like everyone sort of goes in with that mindset. And so people in general are more open to giving people a chance and making new friends. And I feel like that's just the product of the environment. Again, bringing it back to the environment where people are friendly by general, because you don't want to be alone at university. Nobody does. And so everyone's trying to make friends, and that sort of helps your case, you know? Why would you not want to be nice?
I want to change. I want to move the topic slightly, right?
All right.
Firstly, I want to say that I think I should get a glass instead of a water, because it seems like your podcast game is so much stronger than mine. So
why is the glass better than a
Because look how awkward this is in frame. I'm doing this. It's like it's a giant red bottle as well.
You're known for your big water bottles and stickers, though. That's your brand.
Not the only thing that's big.
You could have drink my
I have
water.
big hands as well.
Oh yes, big gloves. I forgot.
All right. I wouldn't necessarily ask a question like this so bluntly, but I feel like
Good.
we're at a stage where it's okay, and I think that you'd be receptive to it. So I want to ask you straight up, like, what's the hardest thing you've had to go through since you've moved to Canada?
Damn, that's a tough question to ask. Well, I feel like there's more than one answer to this, but I think it's not. I gotta find the right words for this. I think the hardest thing for me is accepting the fact that not everything is lost the moment I make a slip up. I've always openly hated myself. Half my humor is self-deprecating. I hold myself to a high standard, one that I will realistically never achieve. And so I've become very critical of myself. And that often leads to a very vicious cycle where I often criticize myself and then lose motivation and then criticize myself because I'm not doing anything, and that feeds into itself. And it's a very hard circle to break out of. And I've had people that have supported me, and all my friends are currently very supportive. And I've also had friends that you're in that circle. You know that I've gone through times where you were like, hey, you don't have to say that to yourself. You're better than what you think you are right now. And it's just detaching myself from the identity that I've carried for the last 2 decades now, and being like, I can be someone more. I can be someone new. This is not who I am. And because usually when you adopt something new, it's a mix of oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, rather, it is who you are, but it's like you want to be someone else.
Yeah, when you adopt a new personality, or you try something new, it's a bit of the old and it's a bit of the new, right? And for me, it's always been that way. And I think the hard part is being like, hey, you had realistically no redeeming qualities back then. Just toss the whole thing away, start new. And I think that's been the hardest part, but I've slowly been working through it. And I feel like I've been a lot more positive just because I've been more emotionally open to and receptive to just new ideas and new methods of looking at my life as a whole. I picked up journaling so that I would have a log of everything that's going on and I can see things in a realistic way. And yeah, so my journal doesn't look that cool. It's just like a book.
Get good.
But it's always just realize, because when you've been a certain way for a while, you default to certain behaviors. Something happens, you criticize yourself, you get mad at yourself, you're sad, you're unhappy, you try to move on.
It's not even certain behaviors, it's like certain patterns of thought.
Yeah, it's like a muscle memory at that point, a muscle thought. And so it's slowly unwinding that and replacing that with new things. That's probably been the hardest. And I feel like it's sort of become noticeable. And I feel like someone who hasn't spoken to me in a few years would speak to me now and be like, hey, there's something different about you. But I'm just working towards trying to eradicate everything old and try to replace it with something new. I would say that's definitely.
How has that process looked for you? Was it that is it that you wanted to be a more positive person, and then you had that in mind, and then made the changes accordingly, or you didn't even have that macro view? You started with one thing at a time. You broke it down. Okay, maybe I don't have to think negatively. So how did that? Maybe I don't have to criticize myself for this mistake that I made. So how did that process look for you?
I think for me it was just, you know that gut feeling you get where you're like, something's wrong here. When you see a dark corridor in an abandoned house in the middle of the night, you're like, something's wrong here.
Wait. If you're seeing a dark corridor, then you already went into the abandoned house in the middle of the night. So you've already made a bad decision.
You had to pick it apart.
No, I get what you
mean. I've sort of had that gut feeling about myself for like the last few years now, like around like third or fourth year of high school. So I knew something was wrong. And I think like if I had to pick one of the two options you mentioned, it was a macro review where I was like, I can be, I wouldn't say better, but I can be more receptive to the things around me. I can be openly emotional. And if bad things happen, I can be emotional about it and then try to move on rather than repress anything related to that event and hate myself for it and then try to move on. I can feel sad, I can cry, I can have a bad day, it's all okay. And I can work towards just being more emotionally open, being more positive, being more supportive of myself. And that's just my main goal.
I think I totally understand that. I understand the ways that you've seen it, but why did you even want to make that change for yourself in the first place? Was it that I'm asking because a lot of the time when people want to make changes in themselves, what they're doing is they're emulating certain character traits that someone that they admire has. So why did you want to make those changes?
I feel like I'd gotten stagnant with my relationships, like just people relationships in general. Like you know someone for a few years and you don't really have to try, you know, like before going to university, when was the last time you had to make a new friend? It wasn't like for a while, right? So for me, I hadn't made new friends in a while. And I think when you see charismatic people or you see likable people, they are often more positive in general, and that's just a given, right? You would want to approach a positive person rather than someone who looks like upset or scared or scary. So
it came under the process of that you wanted to make new friends.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to university and I was going to be meeting new people, so why not put my best foot forward, you know? Why handicap myself in that way and make things harder for myself? I was trying to build new bridges, and so I didn't have to be destructive. And so it was a matter of keeping what was good and taking out what was bad and realizing nothing was worth keeping. So
at all? Is it just like you threw everything out? Is like is there anything of your previous self that you would want to keep?
I feel like I was I feel like I was good at being there for people emotionally, but my responses in like those kind of situations were often just devoid of any emotion. I would just look for the most logical outlook. Like if someone was crying, I would try to look for a solution rather than trying to comfort them. And so I've tried to sort of keep that, because sometimes you got to make logical decisions, but I've also wanted to just be more of an emotional thinker in general. I want to be more empathetic. And less pathetic. So it's and so it's just, I don't know if I had to pick something to keep, it would be that. But even then, I would like keep half of it, you know.
It was correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like you saw that it was good that you were there for people and that you wanted to help people, but so that was good. But rather you wanted to kind of reassess the way that you did that. Whilst the end goal was good, the way the journey that got there was not necessarily the most emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, like it's like being a firefighter and only having a bucket of water, right? Like technically, you could put the fire out if you tried hard enough. But if I had a whole fire truck, I would be dealing with the situation a lot better, you know? And so it was like, sure, I can get to where I want with what I have, but I could also be better at what I'm doing.
I'm forever going to imagine you with a bucket of water in them.
I feel like that's not a bad image to have in your head.
You gotta... Yeah. I really like that analogy, actually. From my point of view, and I can only base my point of view, base my perspective on your actions, because I don't know your thoughts. But it seems to me like you're on the journey of of being more considerate, but more
You could say empathetic, or
I want to
just
say
having more empathy in general.
I want to say like you think through things a lot more, being more concerned. Concerned isn't the word.
What word are you looking for? Are you looking for conscious? Like, I'm more conscious of people's.
You're much more conscious of your
go.
thoughts there, and having that seems to have propagated a change in you in different areas of your life, and I for one can see the difference as if it was night and day. Like I felt like in high school. I felt like in high school, like we did have conversations, but I don't think it was to this level of depth, I guess, where I don't know. I felt like that there were certain walls that you had that I wasn't able to cross into, because
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was a very closed off person in high school just because I feel like I've worked away from this bias, but it still sort of sticks in my head sometimes. It's like when you open up to someone and you tell them what you're going through, sometimes they look at you a bit different, you know. There's always a shred of pity or a shred of like, oh, you know, I'm worried about him. And I've learned to accept that as a good thing, you know. I feel like people wouldn't pity you if you told them your problems. They'd be worried about you because they care. And so for me, that's been like a positive change. But in high school, I just thought people would not like me because I wasn't perfect. And so I just was closed off and didn't talk about a lot of things. Just who I was.
Or rather you would talk about it, but it wouldn't be in any sort of constructive way. It would be like, it's like you've accepted it for what it was rather than, are you scratching on something?
No.
Oh, because I'm hearing.
Does it sound like I'm scratching?
I'm hearing like this for some reason.
No.
Oh, that's completely like thrown me off. Yeah. So.
Yes, I wasn't open to I wasn't talking in a constructive way because I didn't think I could get any better. Realistically, I'm gonna be honest. I thought that was the best I could be. Now I know that was a lie, very clear lie that I don't know why I couldn't see before. But I thought that was who I was gonna be for the rest of my life, and I'm pleasantly surprised to find out that it's not. So.
Are you happy?
Yeah. I mean, in general, I'd say I have a lot better. Like my good days are a lot more frequent and a lot more happy. Like I enjoy life now. Like I've almost burned my kitchen down cooking the other day, but I had fun doing it.
So you've almost rationalized being an arsonist.
It's not arson if it's your own house.
Is it your house? Do you own this house?
Oh. Okay, if you wanted to get the lawyers involved.
Yeah, I like this. I like. Not that I didn't like you in the past, but I am.
You can tell that you hated me. I was like, it's fine, Zarf. It's fine. You can hate me.
I can open my entry from 2017 and talk about my rant. But
I wouldn't be surprised if you shit talked me in your journal. Honestly, you would. In your will, you're like, you give me a journal. It's just you complaining about how annoying I was in our freeze. I'd be like, yeah, sounds about right.
No. In my will, it's like, and for Armaan, I dedicate a whole book, and it's like this whole book is just me ranting about you. Yeah, from what I can see, and obviously, take it with a grain of salt. It's not like I'm in any sort of position where I it's like I know where I'm going. It's I'm using my own judgment. It seems like you're a much more centered person. It's like you've the only way that you can. The only way that I can get this impression is that you have thought things through in your head, and like you have sorted things out in your head internally, which shows on the outside. And
yeah, I mean, I feel like talking to you and like you saying that is just amazing to hear, because you knew me in high school and you sort of know me now. And like I said, you've always been the wise one in the group, and it wasn't just the goatee. It was just you had the you had the sensibility to think ahead and consider the consequences of most actions, and that often showed in the way you responded to things. And because it was always, if Zarif made a decision, you knew he's thought about the pros and cons, you know. And the worst is like if I made a decision or Prada made a decision, it was almost always an impulse. But when it came from you, it was always a lot more methodical and calculated. And to hear that from you is just genuine praise. And I'm happy to hear that you like Armaan 2.0, or should I say Pranav. But
would you go as far to say that you are a completely different person?
I feel like I still have a lot of moments, especially on bad days, of who I was before. So it's not a full revamp. If I was like a house, you've renovated the bottom floor and most of the top floor, but like the attic and one of the bedrooms is still left. So
there are still certain pieces that are still there. I mean, I guess it's like when you renovate something, it's like you're not getting rid of it. You're just, well, not even renovating. Renovating is like changing things on the surface, but ripping out the foundations and setting something in, that sort of thing takes time.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. All right. Or do you not do that anymore? Do you not chill for subscribers?
I'm almost at 100 subscribers actually, and
did you get an Audible subscription yet? I was so upset when DC Word, I wasn't able to say, make sure you use the code DC Word to get a free audiobook at audible.com.
This is sort of a market test to see whether there's a, obviously this is my podcast. Like, I'm only doing it for my own sake, for my own good. But I'm saying that in terms of art, that's really the thing that makes good art. It's like you want someone to do what they want to do. Like, do you understand what I mean by that? It's like when you have a writer, you want to hear his voice. You don't want to hear him copying someone else's voice. You want to hear his voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just.
If you had to put a product forward that was like, hey, this is me as a piece of art, you would want every good moment of you captured within it. And if you were forced to make it in a certain way with certain limitations, and you feel like you've not put your best foot forward, you know, that's not Zarif on a plate. And I feel like with this method, you have a lot more leeway with what you want to do. Like, you haven't restricted yourself to a certain content stream. Like, you didn't send me like an agenda of like, hey, here's what we're talking about. These are the timestamps. Make sure you follow them. So you're a lot more open to where the conversation goes. And you're honestly just a great host when it comes to stuff like this. And so I feel like you have a good thing here, and you should probably see it through, you know?
Thank you. I feel like we could talk a bit more.
What do you want to talk about?
First of all, thank you for that compliment. It's like, yeah, I mean, especially coming from the guy that kind of pushed me to it. I don't know if you were completely serious about it. I think you might have been like slightly joking about it in the first time we called.
I was excited because if there was anyone that was going to do it, it was going to be you. And so when you told me you were considering it, I was like, this is going to be so cool, because I could see it happening. Not just on like a technical way, because you've used like editing software and stuff like that before, but also just on a production value. If there was someone I had to pick to host, I would pick you. And you also have like the artistic drive to pull stuff like this off, you know? And so when I said it, I was being serious when I wanted you to make a podcast. I didn't know what like content you would pick for the podcast. So I said it in a lighthearted way. I was assuming it would be something casual and not a lot more gritty to reality check kind of thing. You know, I assumed it would be like an entertainment thing or like a conversation thing, something like this. So I didn't want to like put any biases and be like, you should make something like this. But definitely was supportive in a serious way, because I knew if you put your mind to it, it would be a good product. And I feel like it has been the few episodes that I've watched. So
Wait, you've only watched Up and Up's episode, haven't you?
I watched a bit of the Jakob episode because I was like, okay, I got to find out what this podcast is about, because I wanted to be on it. So I watched the Jakob episode, and then I watched Up and Up's episode.
All right. So, what are your current goals? What are you working towards currently?
I kind of want to run a half marathon, so I'm trying to get in shape for that. I think that's 21K, so I'm trying to work towards just being in better shape. And
21.095K. That extra, I don't know if you can do that extra 90 meters.
You know what, you're on yeah. Maybe someone can push me or like carry me. Okay. But I want to do a half marathon. I feel like it's a tangible goal that I can work towards, and even if I do it once, I can do it again and try to get a better time. So it's a fun thing to work towards.
How are you gonna train for that?
I feel like I'm not the best at coming up with stuff on my own, so I should look into some of the resources. But right now I'm just trying to build up a stamina. So I try to run like around 30 kilometers a week. And so I parse that out on different days. So I'm not running too much on one day. And I just try to work towards improving my times, getting a better stamina, getting an understanding of like how far I can run before I'm pushing myself too far kind of thing. Like looking up proper stretching techniques and stuff like that. And just trying to, it's more, I want to be healthy, but that's like a byproduct of this, and my main goal is getting into shape. I just want to feel like happy with my physique, that sort of thing.
But then, I mean, yeah, this is why I hate when people say that general fitness is their goal, because that means no damn thing, because that's not a goal. That's not something where you can stand on something and say, okay, I have got general fitness. No, it has to be general fitness with caveats. You have to be like, okay, general fitness means I can lift a certain amount of weight. I can do a sprint in a certain time. I can run a certain distance without stopping. So whenever someone says like, I think everyone can do a half marathon. I think everyone should do it, because it's a beautiful way of what we talked about earlier, where you're breaking these mental barriers. It's not even the act of running. It's a proxy of what it means that you can do if you manage to do something that you never thought you could do in the past. And whenever someone goes into this, I am more than excited. I'm always encouraging. If you, I think the best way to approach training for a half marathon is you start with looking at someone's program and then seeing what works for you, and then tailoring it based on the amount of time you can spend and how busy you are. So the one that I would recommend is something called Hal Higdon.
Let me write this down. Hang on, wait a minute. Hal Higdon. Okay.
HAL space HIGDON.
Did you really just say space?
Do you not want me to say space?
That's fine. You can say space.
So yeah. Start off with that's what I would recommend. So yeah. Okay. Half marathon. What else?
So like obviously I haven't got a schedule in that for like a proper training schedule set for that one, because this is like a recent thing. I got into like serious running in April, and 2, I want classes to start, so I know how much time I can put into this. And because I have like early morning and late night classes, so I have to work around that and see what timings and what length training sessions work. So I'm slowly going to work towards that fitness wise. Academia wise, I just got into honors, so I'm just trying to work my way towards getting into grad school, eventually getting a PhD and then becoming Dr. Chaiwalla.
Wow.
It's like that's just like a long shot goal. Like that's where I just want to be in life, and like somewhere down the line, but that's a long way from now. Right now it's just trying to read ahead, trying to be just more involved in like the physics society and meet profs, meet people, stuff like that.
Can I ask you in what way you approach learning? I think
could you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a little background to that. For me, there's like, you can learn something superficially, or you can really learn something on a deeper level, right? So you can learn something. I feel like my whole life I've learned things superficially, where I've known the name of something and I've known how it works together, but I don't have a foundational, in-depth understanding. And I think that's carried on to like even year 2 of engineering, where I can use the formulas, but it's not like I really, it's like, it's a superficial knowledge. I can't, like, I'm at the point where I don't even know what I can say is knowledge. And so when I ask you, is like, in what way do you approach learning? Do you approach a degree with the conviction that you want to learn it properly?
So I think like in high school, it was definitely all superficial, you know, redo the test papers, learn the answers, regurgitate, move on. I feel like in university, I've sort of found a split between the two. So if I'm taking like general elective classes, like I don't need to understand the psychology part as well. I can just learn the psychology, learn the linguistics, learn the English sort of thing, regurgitate on the final, move on from the course. But with my physics classes, I feel like I almost have to have a deeper understanding, because like I don't know how it is with engineering, but with physics, when we use formulas, we often have to end up deriving them or proving why they exist. So you almost have to know where it comes from and why it exists and why we choose a specific step. Like we were doing differential equations, and so each solving differential equations, you have a different path depending on what scenario you're given. And to understand which path you want to take, you have to understand why each path exists. So I feel like in those scenarios, I wasn't giving the choice of being superficial learning versus deeper learning. And they just make sure that I learn it deeply, because a lot of these are just foundation courses for later on. So in a way, I feel like I approach my degree with the deeper learning mindset, but there are specific classes where I obviously don't try that hard, because I just need to get the credit and move on.
So would you say you would accept that you have deep knowledge of something when you can apply it to a certain when you are able to apply it in an unfamiliar question?
For me, it's if I can teach it to someone that has no interest in the topic and they can walk away understanding it, I feel like I have a deeper understanding.
All right, we're doing it right now. What is something you can teach me?
All right, what do you want to learn? Because I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff that we both know, because you do engineering, I do physics. A lot of our math is very much the same.
Do you do thermodynamics?
I'm doing that in a month or 2 months.
Okay. Right.
But I can do special relativity if you want, since everyone seems to like things that move super fast.
Except women.
Like the. Okay.
All right. No.
Like
okay. Go on.
The twins paradox. Do you know what the twins paradox is?
No.
Okay, so the twins paradox is that you have two twins that are the same age, right, on Earth. Obviously, they're twins. And then one twin gets on a rocket and goes to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, or whatever it's called. She moves at a fraction of speed of light, so she moves at a relativistic speed. And so she goes to the star and comes back. But when she comes back, she will be younger than the twin that was left on Earth, right?
Wait. So she will be younger than the twin that was left on Earth. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And so that's what Einstein's theory suggested. And so people were like, how does that work? Right. And so special relativity dictates that when you move at a relativistic speed, so like a fraction of the speed of light, that is significant.
At what point does it become significant?
So in all these equations, so in most equations, we have a factor called the gamma factor, in which we have the speed that you're traveling at divided by the speed of light squared, right? And so since the speed of light is such a large number, when you're moving at a speed significant enough that the fraction doesn't cancel out and go basically to zero. So if you're moving at 10 kilometers a second, divide that by speed of light, it's basically zero, right?
Okay, but is there? I would assume that there's like a certain cutoff point. I don't know.
I'm assuming there is. I think the lowest speed I've used is 1/10 of the speed of light, but I don't know if there's a specific cutoff.
So 1/10 would be 0.1.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so when you're moving at a relativistic speed, so this is like a very common question that pops up in every intro special relativity class. They make you do this like mathematically. So they usually use 1/6 of the speed of light. And so when you're moving at a relativistic speed, time flows differently for you. It flows at a different factor than what it does for people that aren't in that reference frame. So the factor at which there's an equation in which you calculate the factor, but to prove it, the mathematical explanation is like a bunch of equations and stuff like that. But the way that the general thing works is that when you move at speeds close to the speed of light, or even relativistic speeds, there's two things that change: your perception of time and your perception of distance. So things will get shorter and your time will also get shorter. So your passage of time. Oh, yeah.
I sort of understand that, because I can see the analogy when you're moving in a car, things look shorter than they actually are. But I don't get why did you say time, the passage of time, what happens to it again?
Right. So if you're moving at the speed, so like we said, when the twin comes back from her trip to the star, she'll be younger.
So that would mean that less time has passed for her.
Less time has passed, so time will flow slower for her. Yes. And just how distance, so that's what, there's this thing called Lorentz Transformation, so where you transform distance and time. So when you're moving at high speeds, your perception of distance will change and your perception of time will change, right? And so that's the reason why, like, I could do the math. I really wish I had a whiteboard so we could do like math on the podcast. But
can you share your screen? You can share your screen. If you want.
Do you think my handwriting is good enough to work it out with the mouse?
Wait. What is Lorentz equation? Because I want to see whether, so you related speed and time to it, right? So I just want to see whether is it proportional or inversely proportional or.
So the time contraction is just your new time is equal to your gamma factor times your, the equation will be time on spaceship is equal to your gamma factor times the time on Earth. So it always has to be in relation to a different frame. Okay,
and the gamma factor itself is
it's 1/1 plus or minus v over c. I can't remember the equation. I just used the formula sheet.
Okay. All right. So you were getting, that's where you were getting at. When you're moving at relativistic speeds, your perception of distance decreases. Distance decreases for you. But also the flow of time becomes slower. The flow of time decreases as well. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So is that it?
And that's literally special. It's called special relativity because the only parts it applies, it's a special case. The case being when you're moving relativistically. That's why it's called special relativity.
So what's general relativity?
General relativity is the way I've only barely touched general relativity in an astro course where we had to learn a bunch of stuff, but it's just describing I think it's the description of how space-time works. Like instead of seeing space and time as two different things, it's just one tangible thing that everything interacts with in the universe. And so we base predictions based